Well, it is that time to take your questions. It's the Charge On Mailbag, if you will. Everybody, welcome back to Charge On. As always, I'm your host, Sean Green. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, like I said, always good. Episode 198, always good to have you guys back. It is July 4th. I'm dropping this on July 4th. Pretty stupid of me, but it didn't even compute until 2 seconds ago when we started recording that this is dropping on a holiday. So I hope you are enjoying your July 4th festivities. Hopefully it is not pouring down rain. I feel like every single meteorologist in Florida is saying it's going to be a nasty night. So if it is a nasty night and you're watching because you have nothing better to do, then we appreciate you. As always with me, Nick Geddes. Nick, obviously we're filming this the day before July 4th. So happy July 4th, even though it's tomorrow. But how are you doing tonight?
Yes. Happy July 4th and all those things. Hope everybody is enjoying, or if you're listening after, has enjoyed their hot dogs and their burgers and their events and all that fun stuff. I will not be enjoying the July 4th because I have to work on the July 4th. The holidays just sort of like, they come and go for me. I can't get excited because I usually have to work almost every holiday. So it is what it is. But despite that, yes, good to be back on the show. And I'm just looking at the calendar and I'm like, okay, we're finally into July, which means technically, next month we will see an official, real UCF football game. And I cannot wait to finally get to that point.
Yeah, so technically I'm playing golf today for July 4th, but I'm kind of like you, granted, July 4th, I've never been, I'm not a huge fan of fireworks. I'm not a huge fan of that kind of thing. Love the independence part, but just not a huge fan of going out. But I will play golf. And you mentioned it. We are very close. I think practice starts August 1st, or basically the last week of July, for fall camp. And I can't tell you how pumped I am because I am so sick and tired of finding little niche things to discuss. Not that it's not fun, but I want to talk football. I've gotten to the point where I'm just like, that point in every time where you get to the point of the offseason where you're like, okay, I'm done with offseason. We've had a number of months. So I'm at that point. But with that being, go ahead. Do you have something?
No, I was just going to say, it feels like this offseason in general feels like it's been longer than usual. I feel like, and maybe it has to do with the fact of the coaching change happened literally last year. We're 8 months, I think, since that. So it just feels like in general, it's been a very, very long off season. And it just, for me at least, it feels longer than usual.
Yeah. And I also think the June, July months have been carried by recruiting for podcasts like us, and the hype around recruiting and where UCF is and who they're getting. I think it's kind of hit a lull because you have the new staff, and I don't think a lot of people are looking at that so intently because of just how recruiting is nowadays and knowing that it's going to take a little bit. So I just think the last 2 months there's been a lull, but we are close. And like I said, episode 200, Charge On episode 200 is coming up in 2 weeks, July 17th. July 18th. July 18th. Or I think that's the date. Yeah, July 18th. I can't do math in my head, folks, but it's going to be a good one. We've got a lot of stuff. Nick, you obviously know what we're working on. But only 2 short weeks, which is kind of crazy to think about since I've been teasing it for practically since the beginning of June, because literally there's nothing else to get excited for except the season in this. So really exciting for you guys to see what we've got cooking, because we have a lot of stuff. I feel like everybody, me and Nick have talked about it. Everybody in the UCF space is doing something. I mean, 247 is now Knights 24/7 with Latavius Murray. You've got, On 3 and the Rivals merger. There's a lot of stuff going on in the UCF space. But I would say that maybe I'm going out on a limb here. And again, I'm just what do you call it? Let's just say this. I don't think anybody's doing what we're doing or what we're going to be announcing. So would you agree with that, Nick? I know I'm just trying to tease up some stuff, but I think
yeah, it's a fair characterization. But I think it's going to be. I think it's first of all, it was really fun for us And I hope that everybody else is going to enjoy it too when we're at that point to reveal that.
Yep. July 18th, 2 weeks. Subscribe, like, and share. A lot of cool stuff going to happen in 2 weeks. That's all we're going to say. But let's get into it. After 6 minutes, 5 minutes, sorry for everybody that wants us to just cut to the chase. But I asked some of our loyal listeners, or viewers, about any questions that they wanted us to answer. Because frankly, we needed new topics to discuss. And you guys saved our butts this week. So we appreciate it. We have 4 that we wanted to get to today. And let's just dive right into it. From @DevinPhilly on X, not a question, but can you maybe dive into the 26 recruiting class outlook? I'm struggling to keep up this year. Well, Devin, I don't think you're the only one. I'm going to be honest. Here at Charge On, we've done a very good job over our, starting in 2022, so 3 years, covering recruiting, covering the recruiting classes. We've kind of discussed this, Nick, on previous episodes, how, I think there's just been a weird, I don't think it's just a UCF thing. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm trying to help out what's been going on with UCF by saying it's not just UCF thing. But I think there is a little bit of a lull of not really caring much about what's going on because you don't know what players are going to stay. You don't know what players are going to leave. It's like one day the guy can commit one place, but then there's also the factor of this is a brand new coaching staff and nobody's expecting this 2026 class to be good. So kind of speak on that a little bit before we kind of give an outlook.
Yeah, it's a combination of the two because like we've said, for the last 8 months or so, UCF is essentially starting from scratch right now. And all of that sort of hype and that buzz that was on this program, I would probably say before, midway through the last season has sort of faded away. And so you're starting from scratch here. And so when that happens, recruiting almost feels like it's like at a point where they had to completely reset and they have to sort of evaluate, okay, where is our standing in the college football footprint? Where is our standing in the Big 12 footprint? And how can we push forward here, establishing, a clear plan and a mindset of how they want to approach recruiting, which kind of kids do they want to target, what kind of areas, contacts, new coaching staff and stuff like that. So it's just a lot of unfamiliarity right now with where they are in the recruiting landscape. And so I think that's played a role in it. But like you said, the other part of this is just, you could say this about every program is dealing with this. And I've seen a lot of people comment on it, whenever a lot of people talk about recruiting at UCF is, well, let's just see what happens when we get to the end. When we get to early signing day, how many of these kids are going to, stick? And I think that's just an overarching feeling is because we've already seen it. Some of the impact players that were in this class, in fact, the top ranked player that was in this class, Wortham, the receiver, who we were really excited about. And I remember we were talking about him probably a month ago. And we were like, man, let's really hope that UCF can hold on to that guy because, he's a rising sort of receiver prospect in this class. And lo and behold, he's decommitted and he committed elsewhere. So it happens, right? That's just the landscape of college football that you have to deal with. And so I certainly think it's a merger of the two, or a marriage of the two rather, of why maybe the feeling is like how you mentioned. But I probably would say the latter probably contributes a lot to it. It's just in general, people are not getting their hopes up anymore when they see someone commit to their school like they used to.
Yeah, and that's honestly, Devin, that's why I think not a lot of people, you're not the only one struggling. I used to I would post on X, I would post a little, when Gus was here, I'd post a boom with the graphic, give a little a player info, and I don't really do that anymore. Not because I don't want to, but because for me, it's do I think this player is going to ride it through or not? And I don't know.
There are some players though that you can I'll give you an example in this current class of a player who is committed, who I think, I'd be really shocked if that didn't stick. And that would be Kane Archer and, or not Kane Archer. I was going to say Dante Carr actually. Hope Kane Archer sticks. I think both will, but Dante Carr I mentioned because Dante Carr, he's been on this show with you. He's been on other podcasts and other shows as well. I think he was in the Space Knights thing not too long ago, if I'm not mistaken. He's been making the rounds. Okay. He seems to really been, doing his part and, showing his commitment to this program. So that's an example of a guy I think even right now you can say, okay, there's probably a good shot that dude's going to stick. But again, it's still for a lot of people, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, so UCF did, to answer your question, UCF did just get a commitment a couple days ago. Jaden Curtis, defensive lineman out of Ocean Springs, Mississippi. I will say this, UCF is kind of going around the country. If you look at where they are grabbing players, you've got, Mississippi, New Jersey, Arkansas, Massachusetts.
Top-ranked players from California.
Exactly. So Georgia, Texas, Pennsylvania, like UCF is going around the country and in grabbing players. I think that's where we kind of discussed it, where Scott Frost is going to want to go in the state.
Isn't that kind of interesting though? Like only 5 of the 15 players that are committed so far are from the state of Florida.
It is.
It is. I mean, as much as I like the fact that they're like expanding, it still is, a little surprising because, obviously Florida, massive talent-rich state, maybe the biggest in the country, and only 5 guys from there.
So the thing I'll say about this, and I look at this way, is you're grabbing a bunch of different coaches. Recruiting is about coaching, right? It's about the coaching relationships with the recruits. And Scott Frost brought in a lot of coaches from a lot of different areas. And I think their main goal, obviously, is to recruit Florida. That was Scott Frost's goal when he was here. I'm sure that's their goal moving forward. But I think with all these coaches having prior relationships with certain players, I think that's why you're seeing so many different places, because it's about who the coaches had relationships with prior. And I think that's why you're seeing such a mix of where recruits are from.
Yeah, and also keep in mind too, in regards to this class, it's a fit right now. It's a 15 player class, which is one of the smaller ones in the country. But think about this, Sean. Before the calendar flipped to June, this class had about 4 or 5 guys in it. So like, if you're looking for something to like get excited about a little bit, or just looking at a trend, clearly this staff spent a lot of time, on the road in June, because they landed 9 players in June. Even with the decommitment of Wortham, they obviously landed Jaden Curtis earlier this week. So that's 10 players that they've landed since June. So maybe a little bit of I don't want to say a late start, because it makes it sound like they didn't start recruiting until June. That's not what I'm saying. But in terms of getting guys committed or getting the financial stuff sorted away, because obviously that plays a big role in a lot of this stuff, it seems like a lot of this has sort of taken off in the last month or so.
Yeah, they're starting to get commitments. They're starting to pick up some steam here. They're getting, I know Arthur Lewis is another guy that he just committed. He's a running back from Barnum Trail. He's a Florida guy. So again, you're seeing again, like they had Kaj Baker earlier in the month. He's again another running back type from Florida. You see the guys that they're going after. But at the end of the day, I will say, to your point, there's 15 commits in this class so far. And what you're going to notice is, in the last 2 years, granted, you can't really look at last year's class because Gus left and a couple of recruits decommitted. But usually the classes are pretty small. Like Gus's class, I think in 2024, he had 17 commits. Last year, I think it was 13. And I said, I would expect this class to be a little in the 20s. I'd probably say the 24 to 25 range is probably where they want to get it. But you have to understand, this is, again, they're trying to build up to getting some of these different guys. And I think the relationships next year will be more intriguing, because I think you'll see a lot more Florida guys in next year's class. But hopefully, it's July, so hopefully the staff can kind of build some of those relationships with the local kids quickly, and they can get some 2026 people that maybe we didn't even expect them to get. They can steal a couple recruits. I hope that answers your question. It's still not really in depth because, again, it's not. UCF is doing okay. They're doing better than expected. Devin is kind of what we're going to say. At UCF Knights win, as of July 3rd, do you see any player on this football team getting drafted in 2026? I'm going to go with Paul Rubelt in the 6th round. Nick, I'll let you start with that one. Granted, it is July. It is July, like they said. But do you see any player maybe making an impact well enough to get drafted?
I mean, first of all, the question came in and they mentioned Paul Rubelt in the 6th round. I mean, Paul Rubelt, I mean, you have to remember, Paul Rubelt was a Heupel recruit. So obviously he's an older player. You know, I'm trying to think. You know, Tylen Grable was a very large dude, obviously, who played the same position as Paul Rubelt. And he got drafted, what, in the 7th round?
No. Oof.
It was late, but nonetheless, he got drafted.
Yeah, 6.
I think Grable was a better player than Paul Rubelt was, or is, rather. I think you would agree with that. Yeah, so, I mean, he could have a great season this year, and obviously with his size and everything, maybe that would get him into the conversation, but that's just speaking to Rubelt. Other than that, I mean, you know, maybe we have to see. Remember, last year he didn't play at all, so, you know, we'll see, like, you know, John Walker. If John Walker comes out this year and has a really, really, and he'll have to have a really, really strong season, and he decides that, okay, my draft stock is where I like it, and I want to go to the NFL, then maybe John Walker, but I don't know. I can't see him only coming back for one more year. It feels like he'd probably stay, and obviously in the NIL world, there's more incentive to stay. So maybe John Walker. I can't see Malachi. I can't see Nigel Lee. I'm just going through like the guys who are like seniors at this point.
Yeah.
Braden Marshall, maybe. You know, because like I'm just trying to compare it. Like Mac McWilliams got drafted, you know, 5th round.
And that's why it makes it hard. Is
it's hard to
these guys got to get on the field.
Yeah, it's hard to project, but I would say it's probably a better shot of or defense rather. Like I can't see offense. A player.
I have one on offense. I have one.
Go ahead.
And that's Carter Miller. Carter Miller has had 2 good years of football, obviously at a lower level. He was a highly sought after transfer recruit, 4-star transfer recruit. And I think players like that usually prove that they are, especially on the offensive line. Like you look at Matt Lee, he was at UCF, then transferred to Miami. I think Carter Miller could potentially, if he puts a really good year together, I think he could get drafted. I'm pretty confident in that. But besides that, it's hard, and we don't need to get into it, but it is hard because a lot of these players, let's be quite frank, I mean, they haven't put enough on tape to get drafted. It's not like last year where you kind of knew, like, okay, RJ was going to get drafted. You knew, like, later on that Mac McWilliams was shooting up boards, right? And even then, like, you thought Kobe Hudson by the middle of the year, you thought Kobe Hudson was 100% going to get drafted, and he didn't. So it's like, you have to look at it from that perspective. Like, if a guy like Kobe Hudson is not going to get drafted, is there anybody on UCF's roster this year that you think will have a comparable season of productivity and get, like, that's where you kind of have to
even of the players who transferred out, off the top of my head, the only one that I would say would get drafted would have been Lee Hunter.
Lee Hunter, yep.
And Lee Hunter is probably he probably could be a day 2 pick, to be honest with you. But even other than that, like if you had kept some of the guys who had, hit the portal, like thinking of like Kittler or Medley or Marcellus, I didn't see any of those guys getting drafted either.
No, definitely not. Let's go to one of our YouTube subscribers. Steve says, all right, a question. What position group are you the most worried about? I haven't given this one much thought. Can I say every position? Is that like an answer?
I'm worried about all of them. All of them.
Yeah, I am worried about all of them. Not in the, like, listen, at the end of the day, like, I've heard great things out of spring. So talking to people, I'm way more confident than I was after spring than I was before spring. I think what I'm probably most nervous about is just I don't think it's position group. I think it's more, and I guess depth would, count. I would say probably depth on the defensive line.
Oh,
I think.
Interesting.
I think on both lines. I'm going to say that. I think, granted, the offensive line I feel a little bit more confident in terms of the starting 5, and I think the backups could be a little bit. They could be better, but I think they can work up to that. My whole thing is you got John Walker, who's clearly your 1A on the defensive line. He's coming off of an injury. I think that concerns me a little bit. You got a guy like Malachi on the defensive line who didn't have that great of a year last year, almost took a step back. You're bringing in guys that I feel confident in, like Sincere Edwards is a dude that I think you can really build around. It's one of those things I am concerned about because I think, especially in this defense, you're going to need to get pressure. And that's been the crux of UCF the last couple of years, is not being able to get pressure. So I think I would say defensive line, just because I am still concerned that they maybe didn't do enough to improve that unit.
I'm a little surprised you said that, to be honest. Of all the positions, because you said defensive line, and I thought defensive line might be a strength. I guess I see your point about the depth. There's a decent drop off from starter to depth there.
You lost your 2 starters from last year, and now granted, let me be specific because I appreciate you kind of saying you were surprised. I would say I think the talent as a whole, I think can do damage. I'm more concerned about the inexperience and depth on that part of it. You're bringing a lot of guys that haven't played a lot of football, starting level football, playing 75% of the snaps. That's what I'm more concerned. If you really want to ask me, probably the secondary, like corners, I'm probably more concerned with.
You haven't even said the one I'm thinking of yet.
Well, a lot of it is defensively. I think it's going to be good. I am confident the defense. I'm more from where things stand right now. Everything.
From where things stand right now, and I feel it just feels weird saying this about a UCF football team. I have more initial confidence in what UCF is going to give us defensively, than offensively at the moment.
Yeah.
And the position group that I'm so worried about, and because it's so hard to even analyze these, it's receiver. I mean, it is. Yeah. It is receiver. This was a position group that even last year, behind Kobe Hudson, not much there last year until we had Jacoby Jones emerge the last handful of games. But for the large part of the season, it was Kobe Hudson and somebody please make a play. This year, I'm looking at it, and it's DJ Black, Dwayne Thomas Jr., Waden Charles is a true freshman, Carl Jenkins is a true freshman, Marcus Burke is a redshirt senior who came in from Florida but was buried on their depth chart. Burdell, Day got hurt, Jordan Bridgewater, Chris Dahmer-Kant. These aren't exactly the most familiar names out there to a lot of UCF fans, and even right now, if you were to ask me what would be the pecking order at the receiver group? I got no idea, Sean. I have zero idea. I mean, based on stuff that I heard and everything, it sounds like DJ Black might be the de facto number one, if you can call it a number one. But it's such an unknown position group, and obviously receiver is very important. And I already mentioned last year it wasn't in a good spot as it is. To me, that's the position group that I look at and I go, wow. I hope they surprise me, because on paper, it's just not the most noteworthy group, I should say.
See, that's a lot more logical answer than me, but I disagree. Or I don't disagree. I don't disagree. I am confident in a couple of the guys. That's all I'm going to say. I'm confident in the young kids, because what I saw on the practice field, Waden Charles is massive. He's massive. Me and you have talked about this. Dude he is built like a wide receiver one. If you were to build a receiver in a lab, it would be Waden Charles. Carl Jenkins is just as tall, just a little bit shorter, but has just as many attributes that you can work with. So it's that's why I'm nervous. I am nervous because I'm I don't know if they're going to give them playing time. Are they going to go with the seniors and just bury them and then maybe in the second year? So I get what you're saying, though. I do get what you're saying. But the Scott Frost offense, Nick, it should be able to work for anybody.
Ironically, if you were to flip that question and ask me what's the position group I'm the most confident in, to me the answer actually is on offense, and it's running back, because while he's not RJ Harvey, and we should never put those expectations on him, Miles Montgomery in the time we saw him last year was pretty damn good.
Really good.
And I have to think that UCF is going to try to continue to run the ball effectively. I don't think you just, even with a new staff and a new everything, I don't think you just throw that away. I like that had sort of become their identity under Gus, obviously. And Miles was a solid part of that last year. And, I've been on record. I'm a big fan of Jaden Nixon's game. Curious to see how that goes. And then you obviously have the two young dudes, Tavion Swint and Stacey Gage. So if you were to flip that question, I think running back is the position group I'm the most confident in.
I would agree. Hands down. I'm really excited for the running backs. All right, let's get to our final question. At Ian0614 on X, quarterback updates even though it's not practiced yet. Gotta love when people continuously ask
quarterback questions.
Who the quarterback is going to be. It's funny because last year we got none of it because it was KJ Jefferson right up until the season.
Yeah, maybe we should have had some of it.
Yeah, exactly. There should have been a lot of conversation. The season before it was, is it going to be John Rice? Is it going to be Mikey Keene? Like, what's the situation? This season, nobody has any idea. And we're going to give you our intel, not saying that we're the most notable people on the space, but we've heard some things. And I don't think it's much of an update because you've heard it from a couple people, and we're more so going to emphasize that. Basically, from everything we've heard and who we've talked to, and I know this is going to be a disappointing answer, and I'm sure this is not going to be the thing you want to hear. Nobody has set themselves apart from one another. In true competition fashion, the competition is competitioning. All the quarterbacks are making a case. I think obviously me and Nick have our our thought process of who will win that job. And like I've been upfront and honest since before spring that it's Taven Jackson's job, in my opinion. He's the most talented thrower of the football. It's who they went out and got in the transfer portal and paid a lot of money to. I would assume Taven Jackson is quarterback one, but we've talked to multiple different people on this. It seems like nobody has gone out and won it, which could be good or bad thing. So, Nick, kind of give your take on it. Again, it is July, and there is a fall camp. I would assume that this competition is going to go throughout fall camp until somebody says, this is my job, and takes it.
Yeah, the way I'll put it is, if Taven Jackson does not win this quarterback competition, then Taven Jackson has nobody to blame but himself, because I think we got a chance to see the Jakari Brown experience last year, and it wasn't exactly polished at all. Cam Fancher is interesting because when he first transferred into UCF, we were sort of chatting and we're like, oh, they're just bringing in a body, like, round out the quarterback group, veteran guy, whatever. But based on his track record, you were thinking, no way is he going to start for UCF by the time we get to August. And yet here I sit 1 month out, and I have this feeling that it's between Taven Jackson and Cam Fancher. I just sort of have that's sort of like my gut feeling on this. And if Taven Jackson had done enough in the spring practice sessions and all the practices that they've had leading up to this point, if he had done enough, they would have gone ahead and thrown their entire support behind him and made it known he's our starter, he's our guy. But they haven't done that. Now you could look at it. You can look at it from two ways. I mean, maybe they just they're under no pressure to name a starter. Nobody's holding a gun to their head saying we need to have a starter now. They don't need to tell the media anything. They can keep that in-house as long as they want. This is a very new offense, a very complex offense from what I understand. So you maybe want to give these guys every chance to sort of learn it and run it with who they believe is going to be the first team offense and see how both do. And you want to have more time for that. And obviously when practices begin, you're going to get that. So there's multiple ways to look at it. But yes, I would still say that a lot of things are still undecided right now. But given the fact that they were pretty quick to pivot to Taven Jackson in the transfer portal when he entered, and the fact that they were reaching out and Milton being involved and obviously there. And it seems like if he doesn't get it, it would be a surprise at this point based on how much they threw behind him back in December and January.
And that's why I said you can definitely use
and keep in mind, and
clues.
You brought this up too. You might have probably going to say it, but I'll cut you off though.
No, go ahead.
For what it's worth, the Big 12 media days. You pointed this out to me before the show. The Big 12 media days. There's no quarterback going. No quarterback going. If they would have had a quarterback going, then obviously that would be we would have the answer to that question. So clearly they're not ready yet.
No, they brought 4 seniors, but not one quarterback. And I think that's telling. And I think, look, at the end of the day, it is July. They have a month. And listen, I can see both sides of the coin. If you are concerned, I can see why you'd be concerned. If the money they're paying Taven Jackson, if he hasn't gone out and won it yet, then there is what are we paying all this money for a quarterback that hasn't won a quarterback?
The opposite of that, though, is like just because they're paying him a lot of money, doesn't mean I want you to just automatically go, all right, Taven, your job. We're all good here.
Exactly. But this is what I'm saying. If Taven Jackson is not starting week 1, if he's not starting week 1, then you should have the confidence that Scott Frost is not going to run a college program like every other college coach. Because if Taven Jackson is not out there and Jakari Brown is, or Cam Fancher is, that tells me he didn't win the job. And just because they're paying him the most money, they're not going to throw him out there if he's quarterback. It's just because they paid him the most. Which, let's be real here, from everything we heard before the season last year, KJ Jefferson should not have been quarterback 1 from everything in practice. But guess what?
Isn't that one of those things where we were hearing all that stuff last year and we were just sort of I don't want to say we weren't believing it, but we were just sort of going
we're like, it's practice.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
It's practice. Look at what he did at Arkansas. He'll be great here, right? We were all thinking that.
And then we quickly learned that practice does matter.
Yeah, then we got to New Hampshire and we were like,
oh.
Yeah, okay.
We got to the spring game. Remember, we were at the spring game and we're like, that was rough, but it's the spring game, so it doesn't matter. And then New Hampshire happened and we're like, this is not good. And everything in practice is true. So I think it's a good thing that Scott Frost and the staff have not named a quarterback yet. I think they want to give every guy an opportunity, but I also think the quarterback hasn't gone out and won it. And if a quarterback hasn't gone out and won it, then he doesn't deserve the job yet. And like I said, it is July. They're going to have a couple weeks of practice leading up to the first game. And Nick, I'll go on a limb here. I'm going to go on a limb. I know nothing. This is just just speculation. I think if it's still neck and neck or close before the first game, I think they play 2 quarterbacks in the first game. If it's still nobody's gone out and won it, I think week 1 you might see one quarterback start the first half and you might see another quarterback start the second half. This is the type of season where, again, I don't think it's going to be a Gus Malzahn where it's just he's our quarterback, let's go. And then you do they would rather say, okay, it's not, we don't want to have multiple quarterbacks play, but none of y'all went out and got it. So prove it on the field. Tell us why you guys should start.
Yeah.
And I could totally see Scott Frost doing that.
That's a good point. I mean, and honestly, now that you say that, I almost feel like that's the most likely scenario is that you see at least 2 of these guys play in those first 2 games. I don't know how they'll divvy it up, but I could definitely see that scenario because I would think you probably agree by the time they get to the North Carolina game, you want to have that settled.
You want to have your guy.
Yeah.
You want to have your guy. And I want to make that clear. No inside intel on that. I have zero clue. I just think that if you get through the first couple weeks of practice and it's still up and down, everybody's beating everybody neck and neck. If I'm a coach, I want to have my guy, but I don't want to have the same thing that happened last season where you're playing, you start with Taven Jackson, then by, middle of the UNC game, you're switching them out with Jakari Brown or Cam Fancher. I would rather you play multiple quarterbacks in the games that you're supposed to win and then, stick to a guy by at least week 3. So who knows? We've got 2 months to let it settle and a lot more time. But Nick, any final thoughts before we head out?
I'm ready for football. I'm over the off season.
Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you. We are so over. We are so over this. At this point, now granted, once August 1st hits, now granted, like I said, we've got some exciting stuff coming in the next couple weeks, which I think everybody will be very happy about. But August 1st just needs to hit, because then it's like every day goes by, you're inching closer and closer to the season. College Football 25 does come out next week. So, we'll get that little video game action in the college football world.
Sure.
We'll have some Big 12 Media Day stuff to talk about next week. So, on next week's episode,
we had the uniforms. We had the uniforms.
I talked about the uniforms.
I know. I didn't talk about the uniforms.
You didn't. It's fine. They're the same. They're basically the same. So it didn't matter.
I'll just make a quick. I'll just make a quick comment on it and just say,
sure, that could be your final thought.
I don't know if I ever realized, man, the previous font kind of sucked. Can I say that? I'm whispering it because I'm scared to say that out loud. But now that we see these uniforms side by side, can we just acknowledge that the 2022 to 2024 font on those uniforms was awful? Can we say it?
I think that's fair.
It looks just fair. A bunch of little it's like little stick drawings. It's so small.
I think it looked better. You don't think about it until they change it.
No, until I saw it side by side, I was like,
yeah, and then you're like, that means they did a good job, though. So,
I will say, I thought all the hype that was building up, I thought it was going to be something
massive. Which we haven't seen the night mode jerseys yet. I hope they're in the game next week but I'm not assuming.
Well, these ones are going to be in the game. I know
these will be in the game, but the night mode and light mode jerseys, if they still do those,
I didn't even think. Hold on, we can leave. Time out. We can leave the light mode in the past. I'm good. I'm good on the light. I didn't like the gold font from the beginning. I couldn't see it.
Yeah, I didn't like the light mode, but it's fine. But if they update it and make it look better, then I'm all for it. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Charge On. Please subscribe, comment, share, do all you do. Follow us on X, and also follow our Charge On X page. That's going to start, again, episode 200. A lot of stuff. So be sure to follow the Charge On X page and subscribe down below. All right, everybody, happy July 4th. This has been Charge On. We will see you next week.